Christian could probably share his story with DSD. He was traveling around the world teaching all these dentists about stuff, and they were going, "Oh my God, this is amazing."
Duh.
Dentists were like, what? There's
That's right.
absolutely no way that I need that. And it makes no sense whatsoever.
How a dentist feels if they don't have relationships with their staff.
I mean, many dentists would be a lot happier if they didn't have to have a relationship with their staff, I'll tell you.
So if you are part of the DPO, let's say you want to take 2 months off, go crazy. Can you do that?
My brother he's off all the time.
Okay.
He's here all the time. He lives in Arizona, but I see my brother from Arizona more than I see my brothers who live in the same county as me.
If you want to get funded by Jeremy, email him.
Tired of bouncing between ClinChecks, refinements, and Invisalign bills? Serving patients is what you do best. Leave the back and forth to us. With TwoFront, you get to unwind, fully automate your Invisalign practice, and watch your patients receive the highest level of care without losing any control. From closing your patients to designing ClinChecks, managing insurance and compliance, your TwoFront team does it all. Think of it as a splash of simplicity. Use one simple platform to have full visibility of your patients in treatment. Dentists and orthodontists across 150 practices have jumped in, seeing their Invisalign production soar without adding any extra chair time. TwoFront members have seen a 350% increase in production, adding over $100,000 in profit to their bottom line. Whether you're on the court or in the office, TwoFront helps you ace your goals. See how TwoFront can transform your practice. Visit mytwofront.com/Ingrid to book your demo and dive in today.
You got a crooked smile, well that don't bother me much. You double over, working double time, you double tough. I'll just shine it up until the sun hit like a glare. I gotta dare, get the fuck up out the chair.
Meet Jeremy Krell, a true leader in both dentistry and business. He's a general dentist who has been an operator at companies like Oscar Health and Quip, the popular oral care brand. He started the first venture capital fund in dentistry called Revere Partners, where he helps dentists get funding. In this episode, we'll cover how dentists can stand out by using the latest technology to improve patient care, save time, and simplify daily operations. We debate different solutions to staffing problems and whether or not technology can help you find and keep the right team. We'll review the DPO practice model and debate whether or not it's the future dental practice model. We'll also dive into how to bring your team on board with new ideas and technologies by showing them how these technologies can make their job easier and help them grow. If you're ready to streamline your practice and stand out in today's dental world, don't miss this interview with Dr. Jeremy Krell. Welcome back to The Happy Dentist. Today we have Dr. Jeremy Krell, and we are so excited to have you back on our show to dive a little bit more into what you recommend dentists should be considering to compete with DSOs, talking about investment strategies, and more. Welcome back, Jeremy.
Thank you so much for having me, Ingrid, and as well to the team, Christian and Kyle. It's great to be here and to have such a great conversation again.
So where did we leave off last time?
You did succeed as a dentist and a practice owner leveraging tech. You saw the opportunity of tech growing in dentistry in such a level that you created a fund to invest basically in tech in dentistry, and you're thriving through the fund and became a master on finding opportunities, curating opportunities, connecting people, connecting the money to the opportunity, all around tech. So my first question is, if we go back when technology started to impact dentistry, your evolution as a dentist, how technology actually impacted you as a dentist?
No, it's a great question, right? I think of myself and the practices that I was in. I practiced in a couple of smaller local, one of them was one practice, one of them was two going on three local practices in downtown Chicago, in the South Loop of Chicago. I also think about my practice experience in Jersey City, up and coming, sort of booming area, young professionals and young families sitting right across the pond from Manhattan. These are urban or semi-urban locations where there are a high density of dentists. There's a high amount of need among the patient population because it's a highly populated area. You have to think about your your strategy, your competitive advantage, essentially, as a small business, as a small brick and mortar business, compared to the other practitioners around you, and even more importantly, serving the need of the population that you're trying to attract. So I think about myself there, and there were several business moves that we made. In addition to business moves, there were also technologies that we adopted that not only made us different, not only helped us deliver better healthcare outcomes, but made us more efficient as a business.
And this was around what year?
I graduated in 2013, so we're talking about, call it the next 5 to 10 years after that. Maybe it's easier now to look at pre-pandemic. We'll go 2013 to pre-pandemic because that's when we can all claim everything changed. Let's call it that 7 years right there.
What were some of those technologies?
Some of the differences that we were able to make and some of the technologies we were able to adopt, they really varied. One of the practices was older dentists within 5 years of retiring. Practice had a bare bones website. The practice had all paper charting. The practice had wet x-rays. This is the position, but it had an amazing reputation. It had a ground level, street level location in the financial and legal district. It had great doctor inside. It didn't have to do that much marketing in the way that some of our practices have to bring that traffic in, but it did need to totally convert everything to digital. It needed all of it. It needed an upgrade of its practice management system. It was using a very, very, very old version of EagleSoft. It needed to have connected technology to run the fintech payments and RCM stack, which it had none. It needed to go to digital x-ray, not only the physical unit, but also the software to view it. So all of these, and then it did need some marketing, if you want to include website, social media, basic digital presence, claiming your name, address, and phone number on Google, right? These types of basic levels of digital presence. Sometimes it starts off really basic. If you're doing a de novo, if you're just opening a brand new practice and you just have the walls, you're really starting at core IT. You're looking at what are operating systems here? What's the security? What's the phone system? Sometimes it starts at literally the brick and mortar. And that's where that first practice, I got kind of a clean slate, effectively. Everything needed to be overhauled. We were keeping very little except the people, and the big challenge there was to keep the people happy with all the technology changes.
I resonate so much with this because that was exactly my practice that we purchased. Was it had been there for 60 years. They had digital radiographs. They had some old PMS that they didn't really use, but everything was kind of old school. No website. Everything was word of mouth for the last 60 years. Great dentists, great clientele. We came in and were able to grow it pretty quickly because of that. They weren't doing any specialty procedures. I came in doing implants and surgery and sedation and all that stuff. And I think that so many young dentists want to come into a practice that has all this new stuff. But sometimes if you see a practice that, like you said, one of the important things you said was they had great clientele, they had great patients, and they had a good dentist. If you have a practice that comes in like that and you see all these areas you could improve, it's a great opportunity to buy.
Agreed.
We talk about the old school practices as if it was something from 30 years ago, but it's amazing just to realize that everything happened the last decade. Everything that is normal now was not there 10 years ago. It's just amazing just to put things in perspective, how fast things change in the last 10 years that nowadays you cannot even imagine a practice running the way it was running in 2009.
And even Christian, from a technology perspective, some of these things may have been founded prior to the 10 years, but the true high rates of adoption and that of technology that's occurred, the amount of practice management systems and their functionality, whether or not we still have gripes with how they act, but they have come a long way from paper charting, which is the last decade. Yeah. Implants, aligners, AI.
Getting used to outsourcing services like Two Front or DSD, or that was something that I remember talking about this concept 15 years ago, that you're going to take a piece of your process and you're going to send somewhere else around the world that was going to do something for you and send something back to you. Dentists were like, what? There's absolutely no way that I need that. And it makes no sense whatsoever. I need to control everything and whatever. So it's just crazy. Just making this comment because it just came to my mind. We are all involved on technologies and new ways of doing things. And we are talking about the old way as if it was very, very old, but it was just 10 years ago. And
it kind of still is today.
Yeah. And to put a bow on it, one common denominator is the high rates of growth and adoption that have occurred in the last decade. But the other common denominator is almost every single one of those things received extreme resistance in the field of dentistry, right? A lot of the good things we have today, things we are adopting, things that are becoming standards of care, standards of business practice, things we can't live without, things that are household or office brand names. Many of those things received high levels of resistance from most of the profession
Oh,
for
yeah.
many of their early years.
And what do you think it's going to be the next thing that's going to change dentistry?
I think it's interesting to see AI because it has such a longitudinal sort of arc to it. People have to keep in mind, for especially the non as technical people, we've only seen the tip of the iceberg of what AI is capable of. We've only kind of allowed in a tiny, tiny glimpse, right, through a slightly ajar door. What you're seeing with generative AI is only just the next level of the pipeline there. It can extend really, really far. And I'll say, Christian, to some perhaps, and Kyle, to some other maybe uncomfortable areas for the way that we view dentistry today. Think about, for example, what Perceptive, which I'll fully disclose is a Revere portfolio company, but what they've just pulled off is the first in-human, fully automated dental procedure. To put it clear, a robot completing the procedure from beginning to end safely in a patient's mouth.
Whoa.
Drilling a crown prep, and before the prep is done, having the entire prosthetic complete. The crown is sitting in your hand with a tooth that has not been drilled yet. And then that happens, the prep happens, and the crown seats perfectly. Right?
Hold on. Can I make sure I get this? It's both drilling the tooth and it's creating the crown, this robot.
You can
Is that
create
right?
the crown beforehand.
You create the crown
doing what
beforehand,
First Fit did with guides, and Christian was, I think, one of the first people to do this in humans, but now doing it with robotic.
You design the prep on the software, and you design and you manufacture the restoration that fits that prep in the software beforehand. So once the robot goes in, it replicates exactly that design in the mouth, and the crown is already made. What's the name of the company you mentioned?
It's called Perceptive. It's based in Boston, and there's even one added
course.
nice layer there, which is its imaging modality is also highly unique. It's using an advanced and new form of imaging that is allowing for the visualization outside and inside the tooth, below the gum, non-ionizing radiation, and it is allowing for that plan to be created. Planning exactly the prep, planning the finish line below the gum or through saliva or blood, planning it with the removal of decay, the imaging piece, plus the software, right, that allow for the fabrication of the restoration in advance, and then the robot then going and having its plan to prep the tooth. It's pretty advanced stuff, but just as an example, we're seeing that initial AI come in, help us read radiographs, calibrate people's opinions, quality assurance, quality control. We see generative AI coming, actually creating content now, creating new content off of knowledge base and how we think. Then we see it applied to real applications in a human mouth, right? You're starting to see a new arc.
Don't you think that many times we are developing technologies, amazing solutions, wow solutions that are not necessarily addressing the main problems that we have? We know it's the future. I don't know if that's going to become normal in 15 years or 20 years or whatever, that we're going to have these robots doing things and pre-planning and pre-manufacturing. It's pretty obvious that we're going to get there, right? But today, a good dentist can do that in a pretty solid way. It's that type of technology that it's going to become mainstream. Only it becomes so fast, so simple, and so cheap. And that's going to take a lot of time. What do you think are the main problems that we as solution developers should be addressing for the next 5 years? What are the main problems that you think a dentist is facing?
I don't think the robotic solution is necessarily going to be adopted in the next 5 years. There's an adoption curve there, like implants, aligners, and many other biotech, medtech have followed a similar kind of trajectory. So
you think of guided surgery, right? I mean, guided surgery came out 25 years ago, and you still have 5% of implant placers that are using it.
Yeah.
Orthodontists are only using Invisalign for 10% of their cases.
But that's the difference between solutions that address a real big problem and solutions that are just making things slightly better. When implants, Brannemark came with osseointegration, that was like people were missing teeth and there was nothing we could do besides the 300 bridge. We had to destroy the adjacent teeth, and the guy comes with an implant that can replace the teeth. So what is the osseointegration revolution of the next 5 years, you think, if you have ever thought about it?
Yeah.
What do we need to invent?
Definitely different size problems. I will tell you, the robotics folks will sit here and tell you the problems are the business problems. We can differentiate ourselves because we can do more procedures and we're more efficient and we handle hiring problems. There are problems that are big problems, right? Right now, workforce management in dentistry is an immediate near-term problem. We have a real hard
I would say most of the problems are soft skills. They're not clinical skills.
Correct.
But I want to double click on this because I don't see how technology solves for that. Because people, I think it's 35% of Gen Z wants to be a YouTuber. So they're online. How does technology solve for that? They don't want to be in the office making $20 an hour.
The dental technology solutions aren't going to necessarily solve some of these exogenous forces on the market. What they can do is they can help you to, especially when there is a smaller selection of people that would be a fit for your thing. It's already small because the number of people that graduate from dental assisting programs, that graduate from hygiene programs, that graduate from dental school program, that's already tight. And if some of them are being pulled in other directions, leaving the workforce early or pursuing alternative career tracks, how then do you find in an even tighter pool, the right people? And an example there would be cloud dentistry. Again, I'll fully disclose I'm an investor in cloud dentistry, but there you have a focus on hygienists, a really unique platform, and it's big, and super, super fine-tuned algorithms to really match you, this matching system with the right people. Toothio are doing it. On Diem in a different way are doing it, There's some other big ones and ones that are growing fast. There are a couple out there that are having a lot of success helping practices find the right people. Now, does the business model of the practice become more akin to locum tenens and hiring different temp workers, and that just becomes more normal within the business model because of these issues with getting people who are going to work 9 to 5, 6 days a week? Maybe, but you still got to find them. One part of that solution is solved.
I want to ask you specifically about this one because this is obviously one of the hottest topics in dentistry and people are talking about this every single day. So how do you feel? Because obviously there's a lot of these solutions that are solving for this staffing problem issue. Do you think there's a world where we can exist as dental practices, individual dental practices, without relationships? Because that's what we're saying. We're saying if it's a staffing, if it's a per diem solution where hygienists rotate in and out, can we create a great dental environment where our staff does not have relationships with our patients?
I think it's a really tough question. I think there's 2 levels of relationships there that are important. If you're creating a culture in the office, a care delivery system really in that office that is consistent and reliable and repeatable, there have to be some level of consistency of the office staff. You can't just have a total revolving door, even from the business. I'm talking about now, the business management side. Some of your key people, the key business leaders, the key clinicians, some of those people have to stay. Maybe not all, but some have to be core and have to stay. And transition, help to handle that transfer of culture to the other people that may be rotating in and out. So you got to have a core team that stays. The other piece you mentioned, Ingrid, is patients. And look, I think that's being tested. Traditional dental schools will even teach the clinician that continuity of care with the patient is incredibly important. I think it's probably what we all learned, and we've all, in large parts, probably experienced working with patients ourselves. You develop that relationship, they become more open to work with you. It's also a business element, because when you work with a patient, there's a treatment plan. You can't get to it all at once. You got to work with the patient over time and deliver to their needs and work through everything that you can get to in the treatment plan that both of you are agreeable to. So, but it is being tested. There are definitely practices out there that each time you schedule, they're catering to the need of the patient. Get me in at this date, at this time. This is when I have to do it, versus get me in with hygienist so-and-so or doctor so-and-so because that's the person I like and trust. I'm willing to come in when they are available. So there it is right there, Ingrid. I think the switch is a market move, is a market switch here, where it's when people change, the power of decision-making changes over I want convenience versus I want continuity in my care provider.
My personal opinion with this is that relationships will be the big differentiator in the high end of dentistry, especially a practice like mine, very high end, very low volume, very small. I think that you have people that could get things for less money, faster. They can do it on Saturdays. They can do it at 8 p.m. on Thursday. Those are different patient populations that value
I think that
different things.
it may be much more related to the patient's personality more than how much money the patient wants to invest. It's about the problem that you have, the situation, and your character, what you value, I think that there may be, first, I believe that you can deliver high-end quality without having the relationship.
Yes.
It's all about what the patient wants and values.
I think you'll attract a certain type of patient, like you're saying, a personality type that does value that.
I can see super rich people saying, I don't give a damn. Just
I
I
mean,
this
listen, it's kind of like Dry Bar. I go to Dry Bar. Anyone know who Dry Bar is? To get
Yeah.
cuts. I go to Dry Bar once a week. I've been going to Dry Bar once a week for 2 years. I don't care who I go to because I know it's a consistent experience. I know that they're trained. I know how much I'm going to pay. I know what I'm going to get. I know how long it's going to take. But I do see that as a little bit of a dystopian world for dentists because, Kyle, I'm curious what you think about from a happiness perspective, how a dentist feels if they don't have relationships with their staff.
I mean, many dentists would be a lot happier if they didn't have to have a relationship with their staff. I'll tell you, I run a mastermind for dentists. We meet twice a month. It's basically like AA for dentists, and 75% of the problems are staff related. So, I mean, if there is a dentist that is there with a bunch of robots, he or she may actually be happier. And
I mean, maybe we're on to something. Christian, you've been saying that the model of dentistry is going to change. You've been saying that forever, that it's not going to be doctor owned, it's not going to be DSO. So maybe this is something in between that we're getting at.
This is already much more common in medicine. You go to a hospital, you expect quality, you expect convenience. You don't expect person XYZ. You don't expect the surgeon to actually be the best friend with the assistant. You know that things are rotating and changing. So you already have that mentality, acceptance of that situation. In dentistry, we came from a completely different world than medicine. And we were on the backyard pulling teeth and we were on the streets. We're naturally creating relationships, like the guy that owns a little restaurant on the corner and creates the relationship. And now we are kind of going on that same direction into the future where not every doctor will be the boss. Not every dentist will be the boss. It makes no sense to think that every dentist needs to own their own practice. I always said that. It makes absolutely no sense.
What if the practice was owned or managed? What if it was a public company, small or big? Forget about the size for a second, but basically a public owned, patient, largely could be patient owned as a practice or practices. What if it was done on blockchain? Right? There are some different alternative, unique models from DAOs to public companies that it's interesting to think, how would that change the dynamic of the provider, the relationship with other staff in the practice, the provider-patient relationship? How does that work, right? Because the ownership, the incentives, it's a little different. I agree. The quality of care has to be the same each time. I also agree. If you stratify the data by different personas of patients, I'm sure you're going to see a different level of care for everything from quality to cost to relationship and so on.
Let me just clarify one thing. I still believe that the best quality of dentistry today is performed in small clinics, privately owned. So I'm not saying that whatever is the next model is better than the existing model. I'm just saying that that's a trend that is going to happen regardless if it's better or worse.
It's the fundamentals of capitalism. It's the fundamentals, right? Like if it's something is tied to your name, you're going to do better. I'm almost imagining, I recently heard about something like this in medicine, and I'm curious what you think, Jeremy, where it is doctor owned, but imagine if it was Tend clinics, right? Tend has crushed hospitality, they've crushed experience, they've crushed technology, all these things that are really hard for dentists. But Tend is like franchise, and basically the doctor owns 70-80%, and maybe Tend owns 15-20%. And we had this rotating staff model. Oh,
So
no,
they're
no,
like
no.
the
They're
opposite of-
actually, they're just a DSO. They're a DSO, not doctor owned or anything. But I'm saying, what if that was the
what if?
case? You know what I mean?
I was gonna say I don't think they have doctors that own that.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'll tell you this from a DPO standpoint. So MB2 and my
Yeah.
brother's a part of MB2. He is so freaking happy.
Yes.
It's kind of what I think the original DSO model was supposed to be. Dentists, we're good at doing dentistry. We're really frustrated with managing staff and hiring and firing and ordering. And I think when DSOs started and it was like, well, let's just create all these practices that are owned by the DSOs, and the doctors will come in and they'll work a little bit and then they'll leave after 3 years. I think there is some negative aspects to that. And I've seen with my brother, his experience with working with a DPO where he still owns a good amount of the practice. He's really happy.
Difference is very subtle there. I know every ethical dentist, if you own majority of your own practice, and every single key moment where you need to make a decision, you're always going to put the patient above the numbers. If the practice is managed by financial people, run by numbers, it doesn't matter how good your marketing is and blah, 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 BS. We know that at the end of the day, the numbers come first.
It's a level of disempowerment. I'm with you. I think it has to be like 70 to 90% doctor owned.
I agree with you guys. I think it's better if it's more doctor owned, but I'll tell you from my experience with talking with people like my brother and others that are part of these, the real smart DPOs don't interfere with clinical stuff because they came in to buy this practice. Like, you're doing well. We bought this practice because you're running it well. Just keep doing that. We're going to take your cogs and we're going to make them shorter. We're going to help you hire and fire. We're going to help you with marketing.
But if you don't grow more than X% at the end of the year, they're going to come back to you.
But you do, because all of the soft skills are taken away and increased and get much better. So your EBITDA goes up because
More efficient.
your costs, you become more efficient. So your costs go down.
My question with those is, do you still, at the end of the day, I think happiness is associated with freedom. So if you are part of DPO, let's say you want to take 2 months off, go crazy. Can you do that?
My brother he's off all the time.
Okay.
He's here all the time. He lives in Arizona, but I see my brother from Arizona more than I see my brothers who live in the same county as me.
So that's a good model. So let's tie back, Jeremy, because I know that this is we're talking about basically how dentists can operate in a more happy way. And I think that what we're all getting to is running a small business is incredibly challenging, right? The marketing, the technology, the people, the experience, the legal HR. There's so much to manage. But if you're at the wrong DSO, it can just make you feel trapped. If you're at the right DSO, you can feel freedom, like Kyle's brother. Jeremy, I'm curious, for dentists who have practices and they do want to compete with DSOs and they do want to own their own practices, what technologies or other things do you think dentists need to adopt to be able to compete with the great tend practice next door?
Jeremy mentioned the frameworks to succeed.
Certainly, we've developed a number of frameworks. I want to make the point, whether this is a small practice or it's multi-specialty or there's multiple locations or it's actually a DSO, it doesn't really matter. Holistically, some element of each of this is going to apply. It all starts with having a culture of innovation. And if you don't know what I'm talking about as a practice owner, or if you haven't spoken about this as a business, then that you're starting on square one. Not a problem, but where you need to begin. The challenge is that there's not a lot of education on this. There's not typically a mature developed process built into the business because we're struggling so much on things like workforce management, or I would say my next biggest one would have been RCM in the practice. So it's really hard to focus on these holistic business processes. But on the other hand, this is the roadmap you reflect back on when you encounter those other problems that there's a tension between. Is this a people problem? Is this a technology problem? Is it something in between? You have to look at your process for innovation. Two things that a practice or a group has to do. One thing is they have to execute across the patient journey, whether it's efficient or inefficient, no matter what, they have to use some form of technology. And in this day and age, even as I was reflecting on and Kyle was reflecting on some of the earlier practices we joined, there's some level of technology.
So Jeremy, just to interrupt, patient journey technology, are we talking like NextHealth?
No, I'm not categorically breaking apart dental technology. Right now, just at a high level, practices have to use some tech. Some of it's software, some of it's fintech, some of it's biotech. Every practice, even the most lo-fi practices, are using some form of technology today. So there's a starting point, is my point. And it's one of those things that every practice has to do. They have to use some form of tech. The other piece is they have to raise or finance their practice. Whether you bootstrapped it initially, or you used a bank and bank loans, or you got some private investor or investor group, no question that you've raised money. You may need to do it again, depending on the size of your practice or your growth goals. And if you're not raising more money, you are managing, right? You're managing your business to certain KPIs, to your balance sheet, to your statement of cash flows. Right. So one way or another, money is a major form of currency here, and so is technology. Right. So keep that in mind with the framework I'm about to lay out. The first framework is discover. The first part of the framework is discovery. You ask questions and question any assumption that's going on in your practice to know what is it that you have, how does it connect, is it secure? There has to be a discovery process. This is where you're searching new opportunities, meaning inside of this category that I'm in, I'm willing to look at, or I can see opportunities 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then within each one of those, your diligence. So it's the discovery and the diligence is the first part of the framework. You got to run a good process. If you're not able to source or diligence deals, in my world, deals in the dentist world, in their practice technology solutions, if you're not able to source them and you're not able to diligence them, it's very hard to make a good decision. right? So that's number one. You got to have that. Number two is the vision, right? And we may need to help in setting the vision, but set a clear vision that is well researched, achievable, and has an end goal in mind. I see my practice in a world where we can do this or that, or some other forms of delivering this in different innovative models are, what if we could do this or that this way? Understanding where is the goal? Where are you trying to hit? Third, you got to quantify the opportunity, because you got to get other people in your practice or in your group on board. This idea is in your mind and in your head. This research process is maybe among you or a small group, but you have to size the opportunity and then put it in terms that people care about in your practice. There's all kinds of terms. I would use different terms if I was trying to get you to invest in the business. I'd use different terms if I was trying to get you to buy a product or service. And I'd use yet different terms if internally, as a business owner or dentist, I'm trying to get you to adopt a new solution. So you have to size it and put it in the terms that people in that practice care about. The fourth is the selection. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you got to pick something. You anticipate that you're going to source from a large, look at a bunch of options. You're going to conduct that diligence, and you're going to pick what is the best fit for you. The best fit for you does not always mean the best product. In fact, more times than not, it's the best experience, and or it's the best team that's behind that product. Don't underestimate how good a product is versus its implementation team, because you put that product to work. Now people have to use that product. You need people to support it. So that's the next step. Don't be afraid to test something out and to test multiple things. You don't have to hit a home run on the first thing that you try or test. It isn't about getting it right every time. It isn't about getting it right to the 100th decimal point. It's about getting something going, even if it's small, staying focused, showing that it works, testing if you believe it will scale. And then last but not least, you cannot underestimate the people part of this process. The people are using the technology. Even in autonomous technology, like the robotics example we discussed earlier, there are always people. We're not talking about cutting out dentists. There are always people, and I'm talking about, by the way, B2B to C, right, through the dentist technologies. There's always people operating the technology. They have to use it. They have to understand it. Sometimes they have to get patients to understand it. That is a huge component. It's not just integration, it's implementation in the workflow of the practice and getting the people who are in the practice, who make up that practice, to use it. So discovery, vision, quantify, select, pilot, and then the people.
Jeremy, do you have like a PDF that we can hyperlink for our listeners that want to follow this framework?
I'm sure we could easily create one. Plenty of slides and documents I have that have that process. That was out of my head, but plenty of slides and documents have that process that I've repeated time and time again. I've done it in my own practices. I do it when I'm trying to coach our portfolio companies. I do it when I'm trying to coach or work with practices or DSOs, because you can see it from each side of the coin. How is the practice seeing that? How does the technology company see that? It's really kind of shareable. It's convertible, if you will, with each perspective.
I think one of the most difficult parts of your framework for me, and I learned this from Christian too, is the quantify part, is getting the team on board. And Christian can probably share his story with DSD. You know, he was traveling around the world teaching all these dentists about stuff, and they were going, oh my God, this is amazing. And then they never implemented it because they couldn't get their team on board. So I don't know, Christian, maybe you want to expand on that.
If you have a smart solution, a smart product, and you are a good communicator, dentists are smart. They're going to understand it, and they are excited about their profession. They love good stuff, and they love good ideas, and they will adore your idea very easily. From a good idea to good implementation, there's a huge difference. And implementation is not about the dentist. Implementation is about onboarding people and convincing the staff. If you want to be a DSD clinic, it's not about you liking DSD. You need your staff to like DSD more than you. And DSD, you need to convince the staff that somehow the DSD concept will make their lives better. Not the patient's life, not your life. Their life is going to be better because you're going to use X, Y, Z, right? And so you have the whole process of onboarding them, motivating them, and emotionally gaining their trust to say, doctor, we're going to put extra effort here, and we're going to try this. And if we like it, we're going to do this every single day. And if we do that, you're not going to worry. This is going to work, and you're going to collect the benefits.
So I have a selfish question. The exact same thing goes for Two Front. In order for us to treat the patients or practices, we need to convince the staff to scan. And, we hear the same thing. We don't have time, yada, yada, yada. So how do you convince someone that scanning benefits them personally, not the patient or the doctor.
The first mistake that we do is that we try to convince the staff because it's better for the patient. I know that at the end of the day, there's this whole bullshit that we all think about the patient and the staff is also thinking about the patient. But in fact, they are real people and they have real problems in their life. They're taking 2 hours of bus back home, traffic jams. They don't have who to take care of their kids, paying rent. They're delayed. They're whatever problems that they have. So your new idea needs to make their life better, or at least have them see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not going to convince you to use the scanner for every single patient because of the patient, because it's going to be better for the practice. Let me explain to you, if we put the effort on this new system, how your life is going to be better, how we're going to be more effective, how we're going to work with less stress, how we're going to finish a little bit earlier, how we may even profit a little bit more, how you can take more money home, how you can take Friday's afternoon off. If we make this work, we need to work together. You need to trust me. You need to let me know what you think. And together we need to make this a reality, because it's obvious. If we make this a reality in 1 year, we all gonna have a better life.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Jeremy, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, to the original point of how do you put the opportunity in the terms they can understand, and it's going to be a little different for each organization, right? If whatever is going on right now in the practice that people are talking about in that morning huddle or in that weekly or monthly meeting, terms are going to differ a little bit per practice. But I did for larger groups especially, I did some interesting work with Tom Cregan, who's now at Raymond James, and he and I spoke together at Dykema. We did a technology workshop for groups from really small to, like 3 practices all the way up to some of the absolute largest in the nation and the world. About 50 in total present, 50 unique organizations present in our talk. And this was one of the areas that I covered. Together, working with Tom, we showed, and this is just one way to do it, right? But we showed how a technology could actually contribute on the financial statements to enterprise value at the end of the day. If you adopt this thing, it changes your revenue like this, and whatever other levers were necessary to move revenue in our examples, our different scenarios. And if you change revenue like that, then it changes your free cash flow or your EBITDA. If you change your free cash flow and EBITDA, then it changes enterprise value. If you change enterprise value, now your valuation goes up. So we were able to kind of pretty clearly show, match back effectively, that the implementation of a couple specific technology innovations actually can become a reality for you in dollar figures. That's an example with a larger group, the management kind of organization behind it, who's looking to go to market for real money. That's not every scenario, right, that I'm talking about. Some of them are much softer. It's that pain that's being felt in a morning huddle day after day, where practice members are, contributing their pain points to you. And so your delivery of a solution is going to come in much, much different terms to them, because they care about, as was said.
But Jeremy, I would add one final step because I think what you said is perfect. That's the story as a company you need to develop to the dentists and help them tell this story. First to themselves, then to their partners, to their associates, then to their bank if they need a loan to actually buy that thing that you want them to buy. And the final question is, doctor, if this really works for you, what I'm saying is actually true, and you grow because of this, how are you willing to share this growth with your team? What is the story that you're going to tell your team to make them, because they're going to be the 50% part of the success of this, or maybe more, 2/3 of the success of this will depend on them. So you need to finish the story, and people usually don't finish the story. They don't do the whole loop, and they expect people to be excited and to work extra hours to learn a different way of doing something that they are already doing without that.
I wondered why more dentists don't give equity to their team. Why aren't people, I have, it's a revolving door of hygienists that are coming in and out. Well, guess what? If they felt like they were part of the team, think of how they would refer people. Think of how long they would stay. Even if they left afterwards, they'd probably still send people there because they have equity in that company.
Yeah,
we should do a whole segment. We should do a whole segment on this.
That's a whole segment, because there's so many strategies. I'm not an expert on that. I'm sure Jeremy may know. Lawyer companies, they have this system where you want to stay, and if you leave, you need to give part back. Or I don't know. There's so many systems in existing businesses that makes people want to stay because they see the growth and the light at the end of the tunnel. They know why they're putting the extra effort.
Completely. And so two things maybe that just wraps us up, which has been a great conversation with everybody. Christian, to your point about finishing the story, as kind of a bonus or maybe a spoiler to folks. And I bet if you put in the effort to finish the story, that finishing is probably pretty closely tied to your differentiator, which is where we started with some of your key problems and the way in which you differentiate in solving them. Probably kind of inherent to the finishing of your story. Kyle, to your point about retention and people having equity in the business, right? Kind of from my world, why are professionals not having more equity in not just the four walls of the practice, but all the stuff inside? Not only are they recommending come to this practice, see me or see our dentist or see our hygienist, but they're also saying, come here, I recommend we use this product, or I'm going to use this product on you today. Why don't they have equity in any of that? Look to some solutions. We at Revere are starting to think kind of creatively about working with some interesting partners in the space about how a 401k can be just as normal to you as having equity in the technology in your practice and how that contributes to retention.
I think this is a real solution to the staffing issue. I love the technology out there, but I think this is the real solution. That's my 2 cents. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on. I know we started off talking about something completely different, but I think this is amazing. I think dentists who listen to this,
He needs to come back the third time.
maybe you'll be a regular guest.
I'll be a regular guest on the podcast. I am a happy dentist. I know at least 3 other happy dentists on this call, and I appreciate all of you. Thanks.
Hell yeah. Where can people find you?
People can find me probably most commonly at my email, jeremy@reverepartnersvc.com.
If you want to get funded by Jeremy, email him. Thank you, Jeremy, for coming on to our show.
Thank you all.
All the best, guys. It was super cool.
So fun.
See you guys.
Get the f up out the chair. Whoa.